Hey, it's 1T, and in this video I will be going over formulas. Alright, in particular we're actually going to be manipulating formulas more than actually using them. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you look at number 1 here, we have A is equal to BH for H. So you're supposed to solve this for H. Now this is similar to the following problem. Let me change colors here. So if you had 2 is equal to 3x, and you're trying to solve for x, you would divide by 3 on both sides. You would get x is equal to 2/3. So we're used to getting a number when we solve equations. So we're doing something a little different here. We're really doing the same process, but we won't get a number when we solve. So let me get rid of this. All right, so in our case, we want to get h by itself. So sometimes I'll just circle the h. And so that means I need to get rid of the b. Well, we have b times h. The opposite of multiplying by b is dividing by b. And so that's what we're going to do on each side. So we get a over b, and it should be capital A over little b, is equal to, and on the other side, notice the b's cancel, and we're just left with h. Any number divided by itself is 1. So we have 1h or just h. Now, some of you might not particularly care to have your h on the right, so if you want, you could put it over on the left. I tend to do that, but it really isn't necessary. It doesn't have to be done that way. Let's move on to number 2, and I would encourage you to try this one and then watch the video. All right, so let's see how you did. So this time we're solving for r, so I circled r. I need to get rid of the t. Well, it's t times r, so the opposite of multiplying by t is dividing by t, so we'll divide by t on each side. We get d over t is equal to r. Now again, I'll go ahead and switch sides. Let's go to the next problem. Again, you don't have to switch to the opposite side. All right, so on number 3 here, we're solving for y. So if you notice, we have 2 terms here. It kind of reminds me of this problem here, 2x plus 5 equals 7. And the first thing we would do, actually, that is not a good example. Let me change this. Really, it would be like 3 plus x equals 8. We would want to get rid of that 3 term to get x by itself, and we'd subtract 3 on both sides if we were trying to solve for x here. So in a similar manner, we're trying to get y by itself, so we need to get rid of that 3x term. We learned that to get rid of a term, you just add its opposite to each side. So you can think of it as you're adding negative 3x to both sides, or you can think of it in terms of subtraction. But we're going to get just y on the left. Now on the right, you got to be careful. You have 8, which is a number, and you have minus 3x, which is an x term. These are not like terms. So I could write 8 minus 3x, but I want to kind of get you prepared for something, and I'll write it as negative 3x plus 8. For this first test, our first section, it's not such a big deal, but we want to get used to putting that x term first. All right, let's move on to number 4. So here we have P is equal to 2W plus 2L. This is the perimeter formula. Oops, this is to be solved for L. So we want to get L by itself. And so first of all, I need to get rid of that 2W term, and then I'll have to divide by 2. Here's where I was thinking of a previous problem, something like 2x plus 7 equals 5. we have to divide by 2 to get the x by itself. We have to subtract 7 also to get x by itself on the left. And we learn that we always add or subtract first. So it's kind of the same idea here. We would have subtracted 2x on both sides there. So we're going to do the same type of thing here. We're going to subtract 2w on both sides. I want to get rid of that 2w term. So we're going to get p minus 2w on the left. Notice these guys cancel, and on the right you're left with 2l. Now we can divide by 2. We get p minus 2w over 2. Now our 2's cancel, and we're left with l. So again, I'm going to go ahead and switch the order. Now, sometimes students will go one more step, and you can do that. We can actually put each of these terms over 2 and simplify, and you would get L is equal to P over 2 minus W. However, it's really not necessary to do that. There's no compelling reason to do that, so the first answer I had is just fine. Let's move on to the next problems. I'd actually like you to see if you can do these, if you feel like you might be able to, and then watch the video. Otherwise, you can just watch me do it. All right, let's see how you did. So on number 5, we want to get y by itself, so I need to get rid of that 2x term. So let's subtract 2x on both sides. Of course, 2x minus 2x is going to be 0. Now be careful, we're not left with y, we're left with minus y. And again, on the other side, when we have a 4 and a 2x, a minus 2x, those are not like terms. I could write 4 minus 2x. Again, I prefer to put the x term first. And this is kind of leading towards something, so let's go ahead now. And we're not quite there. We got one step to go. Notice this is a minus 1y. It's understood that that's a 1 if it's not written. And so it's negative 1 times y. We're going to have to divide by negative 1 on both sides. Of course, negative 1 divided by negative 1 is 1. We're left with 1y or y. Now on the right, hopefully you remember how we simplify this. This becomes, we can actually write negative 2x and the 4 over negative 1. Now some of you might be wondering, how do I justify that? Well, we're actually doing something backwards here. If we had these two fractions, they both have a common denominator, and so we could add the numerators, and we would get what we have here. So here we're literally going in reverse order. So we can break this single fraction into two fractions, and so we have y equals negative 2 over negative 1 times x. Well, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. We're going to get y equals 2x. And notice 4 divided negative 1 is negative 4, and that's how we get the minus 4. All right, let's move on to 6. Again, hopefully you were able to try it. So we're trying to get y by itself, so let's get rid of that 3x term first. So these guys cancel. We're left with negative 4y equals negative 3x plus 8. And now we need to divide by negative 4. So notice I'm kind of skipping this step here. We're just going to divide each term by negative 4. Of course, negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1. Or you can cancel those however you want to think of it. You're left with 1y or y. Now on the right side, notice that's a negative 3 divided by negative 4, so we do get a positive 3/4 times x. And 8 divided negative 4 is negative 2, which we would write as minus 2. All right, let's move on to our last two problems. Well, we'll get to the other one in a minute. Notice we have a fraction here. Now we're asked to find h. And now sometimes students will just divide both sides by 1/2 bh or 1/2 b. And this actually is true, but it's not considered simplified. And so we don't want to do that. I might give you a point for at least some effort. but it's not a simplified answer. Anytime you have fractions within a fraction, you're not simplified. So what we really want to do is what we did with equations. If we have fractions, we want to clear the fractions first. So how do I get rid of that 1/2? Well, the LCD here is just 2. There's only one denominator. So we'll multiply both sides of the equation by 2. So we have 2a on the left. Now, 2 times 1/2, I mean, if you want, you could put a 1 here. Multiply 2 times 1 over 1 times 2. You're going to get 1. In fact, we know that reciprocals always multiply to 1. So we're left with 1bh, or just bh. And so now don't forget, we're trying to solve for h. We'll divide both sides by b. And we get h is equal to 2a over b. And again, if it's capitalized, make sure you capitalize it. If it's lowercase, keep it lowercase. All right, let's move on to our last problem. And I would encourage you to try this one and then watch the video. All right, so this time your denominator is n. And again, I'm trying to get rid of the fraction first. So I'm going to multiply by n on both sides. Again, keeping in mind that we're trying to get h by itself. So we'll have nb on the left, and I'll multiply by n on the right. So we get nb is equal to, now notice this is really just n over 1. And we can cancel a factor in the numerator with a factor in the denominator, in this case the n's. And we're left with h minus k over 1, or just h minus k. So be really careful. That's where people make their mistake. The n's go away, and you're just left with h minus k. Now, don't forget, we're trying to solve for h, so on the right side, we still need to get rid of that k. We'll add k to both sides. The opposite of subtracting k is adding k. We're going to end up with nb plus k is equal to h. And I'm going to go ahead and switch sides, and that's going to be the end of this video.